Good day everyone and welcome to Highlights from this week. This is our show where I discuss news that intrigued me this week. So let's get started. So the first thing that I want to talk to you about is something from Reddit, which is kind of uncommon because it's not really news, but I did want to talk about this because this may affect many viewers. So that's why I want to get it out there. But basically someone found out that an ATM machine that they were using had been modded with a card reader. A fake one. A potential card theft was averted because the person knew what to look for. But as you can see, this plate in this person's hand is actually a mock plate that was put on top of the plate that you see in front of you, the one that's attached to the actual machine, and it's put on by some bad person for whatever reason, mainly to steal their card numbers, and it slides on and slides off really easily. So you should give whatever card readers you use a wiggle, make sure it's the correct one before you put your card in. Ideally, better companies will actually use some sort of tamper seal or a tape or something, which looks kind of like this. And if it was tampered in any way, the seal will appear to be kind of damaged, or you'll see the watermark. So just keep an eye out, because just because technology has advanced doesn't mean thefts of this magnitude don't happen. It's actually more common now just because people are becoming more and more careless. So it's important that you take a look at it. There's different ways that people can actually use this, and it's not as simple as this. Sometimes they're actually inside the card readers. These are in storefront ones. They're pretty much everywhere, and there's even NFC ones so that they could actually steal your card information from tap systems. So just be alert, be ready, and the best thing you can do is probably go through your bank statements at least on a weekly basis at the very least, and flag any unknown transactions and talk with your bank. Make sure you're not being charged double or anything like that. Just look for anything suspicious. I think that's the main way you could avoid this. But keep an eye out, maybe shake or wiggle the card reader, make sure it's not a fake cap on top of the old one. Just thought I wanted to throw that in right at the beginning, because it is a potential problem and it can actually harm a lot of people. Now, the first article that we're looking at is from the Inhabitat, and this is about Windpower being the main source of energy, or actually the only source of energy for all electric passenger trains in the Netherlands. That's pretty cool, actually. The main reason being, we can see that it's becoming more and more viable for green resources to be powering our transportation systems, our public transit, and hopefully in the future personal transit as well. Right now, the Dutch railway company NS announced that all of the electric passenger trains will be running on 100% wind-powered electric energy, starting right at the beginning of January 2017. And it'll be doing that non-stop for the whole year and maybe many years to come after that. So it's really great to hear. They say they have about 600,000 passengers per day, which is not something massive if you compare to something like New York City or any other massive city, but it's a significant amount. So it's not really a small test case, and it's not something that you could easily ignore. It's a significant amount of people, and there are many small countries that still don't use solar energies, and they have way less people than this. So it's actually pretty cool. As I said, they do the energy is from wind farms, but there may be others that use solar energy. And I think the main thing we want to get out is using alternative fuels, regardless of where it comes from, because no matter how they get it, I think it's just better for the environment either way. And since this pushes way more people, I think the carbon footprint already is lower compared to automobiles. So it's pretty great. And what they've been doing is they've been slowly phasing out other fuels, and right at the end of 2016, they actually completely phased out all of the previous fuels, because some of the timelines of building new windmills moved up, and this allowed for this entire timeline to be moved up much faster than they were expecting. And they're pretty proud to announce that starting January 1st this year, they're going to be using all wind, which is pretty cool. Now from there, let's go on to some news by Google. This was actually posted on the Google research blog. This is in regards to their multilingual neural machine translation system. So for those of you who don't know, Google has something called Google Translate. It translates languages. I'm pretty sure many people are familiar with that, at least. But what you may not have known is that they don't use a standard kind of a dictionary table to look up words and just translate them one by one. They used to do that, but since I think about last year, they slowly phased that out, and they moved to a better system called the Google Neural Machine Translation, or GNMT system, which is an end-to-end learning framework. It basically uses existing text. It reads it, understands it, and then makes sense of what those languages are, and that way it becomes more fluent in normal communication, the way it's natural to human beings. And because of this, they've been doing a much better job of translating text in a more human sense compared to how robotic things were in the past. What the announcement that they have is that they've actually have this thing called zero-shot translation. If you look at this diagram shown, it's kind of an animation, and what they're saying is they've tried to teach the machine to learn to translate without even being taught how to translate. So it does this by making some assumptions. It learns what the English meaning of some word is and tries to translate it to Japanese and Korean. It then learns what the Korean meaning of something is and tries to translate it to Japanese and English. And by doing this, it kind of makes connections just like a human being would in the computer. It tries to understand what you're trying to do and slowly tries to learn from it. And then without even being taught how to translate from Japanese to Korean, the system is able to deduce what the meaning would be and make that guess and make it accurate 100%. This is a massive jump, and it's not something I think Google's slowing down, and they've been using neural networks for pretty much everything recently. So it's going to continue to grow, and right now they've I believe added it to 16 of their languages. Language pairs, they've added this zero-shot technique, and I'm assuming they're going to keep growing it to their, I believe, 103 supported languages eventually. But it's a significant jump in the way this is done, and what they've been saying is it's essentially the machine, the system that's doing this translation has actually created its own language to make sense of how to make these translations, which is pretty cool because it used all of these texts and created something that it wasn't taught. So it is kind of artificially intelligent in that way, which is mind-blowing, and it's amazing how advanced they've gotten. But I just wanted to say this because this actually was posted in like November, but I came across it about a week ago, and I think it's a massive stride, even though it wasn't talked about much in the media. And I think it's a great stride forward in terms of where we want to see machine learning and how it can help people better communicate and get along in a globalized society. So next, something from The Verge. Nokia, the phone manufacturer that most people know, at least most people from the 90s would know, teased that they will be releasing new Android phones in February or somewhere around there, basically early this year. And this is pretty big for many people, especially Nokia fans who've been with the company for a long time. Nokia is known for making some great hardware, especially early on in the cellular stages. And in the 90s, they were pretty much at their top with in terms of building unique and advanced phones that were way beyond other devices at the time, even including build quality. So since then, they've kind of gone downhill. They haven't really embraced technology too well as things changed, and they had the Symbian OS and everything, and slowly as iPhone with iOS and many other phones using Android caught up, they kind of fell behind, and slowly they were kind of sold to Microsoft, and they added Windows Phone, which really didn't help much. And anyway, they slowly went downhill from there. But last year, what happened was the contract that they had with Microsoft ended, allowing the Finnish firm HMD to take over the Nokia phone rights. And HMD is actually a company that's actually formed of former Nokia staff that were in the high places in Nokia before. So this is pretty. It's a pretty good thing to hear when you know that if you really did love Nokia phones in the past, it's good to know that it's people who've worked with Nokia phones in the past that are working on it now. And this HMD firm has been given the rights to the Nokia phones for the next decade or so. So they will be the exclusively building Android-based Nokia phones, which is pretty cool because I think everybody was hoping they could get something like that. And once they joined up with Microsoft, all those hopes of the Android Nokia phones kind of went away. But finally, I think we're getting that opportunity. So people who loved Nokia and who enjoy the Android operating system can now have the best of both worlds. Anyway, there's very little information about the device itself. They haven't really said much in terms of specs or anything for that matter. All we know is that they released a model called Nokia 6 in China only. And they believe that there will be 2 other devices released internationally, and these 2 devices will be in the mid tier and a high end tier. And these 2 Android devices will be the ones that will most likely be accessible internationally, and they will be running Android OS, most likely some form of Nougat, so 7.0 and above. They will probably feature premium design and competitive price. And you should keep in mind that Nokia themselves are not building the handsets anymore. They will be handed out down to a different firm, but Nokia will be overseeing this device specs to ensure that it meets their standards. So they, as a part of their agreement with HMD, they do have somebody from Nokia HQ on staff that will be going over the Nokia designs and making sure it meets their recommended specs. In terms of the actual specs of the device, it's not very clear what it's going to be. There are some guesses just based on some leaked benchmarks and so on. So it's nothing sure for sure. But what they believe it's going to be about 4 gigs of RAM, about 64 gigabytes of storage, and it'll probably have a micro SD card slot. It'll be running on a Snapdragon 430 CPU and will probably boast a 16 megapixel main camera, potentially from Sony, although we can't be too sure on that. They've used Carl Zeiss lenses in the past, so I'm just making that deduction, but it might not be. And of course, a 3000 milliamp hour battery, which is pretty good. Hopefully the higher end model may have a bigger battery. I'm not sure. I'm personally a big fan of large batteries. I don't really care about phone size as much as the phone actually surviving through the day, even with high use. So we'll just have to see exactly what they're going to release. The prediction right now is that it'll be released somewhere in the Mobile World Congress in 2017. But if not, they might do their own thing and have their own release event at some other point during early 2017, which is pretty good. It's not going to be a long wait, so we just have to kind of hang in there and hope that it's what we expected. Next, we're going to talk about something on Open Whisper systems. This actually came from something that originated before. It was a kind of expose done by news organization called The Guardian, and they basically said that WhatsApp had a backdoor and that allowed potentially government agencies, or at least Facebook, which is the company that owns WhatsApp, to look into what their viewers were communicating about through their WhatsApp encrypted messaging system. And this became pretty big because people were concerned. Many people were using WhatsApp for sensitive security communication, or just to have some sort of privacy from any type of government interference or anything like that. So having a backdoor in WhatsApp would have been pretty devastating to many people, causing them to change the app altogether. But it's being shown, or at least it's been released, saying that this is false and that it's not a backdoor. What the Guardian believed to be a backdoor was actually just a signal protocol that was developed by WhatsApp to ensure that their devices could have a private key that is per device, and if any device is switched, they could switch devices. A user can switch a device without having to create a new account and losing all the content that they had on the previous account. So it basically just takes a public key, and it basically just recreates a private key based on a new device, and then sends a new one to the new contacts and so on. So it's a pretty advanced issue, and what they say is that the Guardian did not do their research when they were claiming that there was a backdoor. They're saying it wasn't a backdoor, and in fact it was just a way to change hands or change devices or whatever without having to have a lot of hassle on the user's end, which is important because being user friendly is very important if you want to get software into many people's hands. So as you see in this picture, this a small notification pops up here in yellow showing that the security code has changed, and you could tap it for more information. And that happens if you change a device and you have to reinstall WhatsApp on a new device. It just lets your contacts know that the person that they're talking to has changed devices, or at least something has happened to the connection, so they can evaluate whether or not there is a threat, maybe communicate with the person in another manner, and ensure that their communication isn't disturbed in any way, or their privacy isn't leaked. So they've done their homework, and they've done something important. And since this is on the Open Whisper Systems blog, I believe it's probably very trustworthy. Open Whisper Systems is known for making good encryption communication. So being that it's in their blog, it's very likely that it's trustworthy and it's verified what they're saying. Again, it's up to you and your judgment on how you want to take this, keeping in mind that it is owned by Facebook. But as far as it seems from the initial claims were just not substantiated. So there's no reason why people should worry that their security is being breached in any way. From there, just a quick note. This is actually a tweet from SpaceX's official Twitter account that the first stage has landed. So this is SpaceX launched a new shuttle after a long time being off, just because of an explosion that occurred that ended up destroying one of their launch facilities and having to rebuild in the last 5 months or so. So they're finally back to launching rockets, and this is just a great reminder of how awesome SpaceX is. They gone through all the government clearances, and have finally launched again and are free to launch again now. And they've also not only just launched, but they've also landed their first stage, as they've done a couple times before. And this time it was not like any other. It was on a different barge. It was called a barge called Just Read the Instructions, and it was a perfect landing. So I think they're doing something great, and I think they took that downtime and made their processes even more efficient and more accurate. So a picture is of the first stage after it landed. So after going into space and coming back and landing, that's pretty cool. And I really like SpaceX for what they do, and I follow them pretty closely. So it's really awesome to see that they're back on their feet and they're launching rockets again, and hopefully we'll get to see more in the future. Next, something came last week actually about Chelsea Manning. For those of you who don't know, Chelsea Manning was in the army, and sorry, was in the army as an intelligence analyst, and they revealed some government information about military activities in around the world, and they pretty much just leaked that information just because people want. She believed that people should know, and basically she's been given about, I think, 35 years sentence for releasing that information because of her position in the military. And this was a pretty bad traumatic thing. It's a pretty bad sentence, and I mean, even some people who commit manslaughter and stuff like that get a lower sentence. I think they were doing this more to just kind of send the message to everybody else. But anyway, all that aside, President Obama, before he left his presidency, actually pardoned Miss Manning for what she did, and basically commuted her sentence to a shorter amount of time, which will end in May 17th of 2017, which is I think a big thing. I don't know if she's been convicted and in prison since 2010, but I believe it was sometime near that time. So she's already been in prison for close to 7 years, and keep in mind that's 35 more, or not 35 more, but 35 altogether. So that still would have been a much longer time than being able to come out this year. So it's pretty good pretty big news, and I hope it kind of goes in its progress, and hopefully they will stop crucifying people who really make public information that were of bad activities that were hidden from the public, of activities that were actually not in good taste. And many may say this was I would say a bad thing, because she might have put people, US troops and other people, at risk. But at the same time, the government was operating, a government which is a public entity, was operating very secretively. So I think at some point somebody does have to release this information, and even the government itself does release a lot of this information after 20 or so years later. This has just happened much earlier, and so not much more has to be said about it, but it's interesting. It's just interesting that this happened, and I wonder what the implications are for other people like Edward Snowden, who have technically haven't been tried yet because they're in asylum, but are in pretty much similar situations. So Anyway, something different this time. This is about a Tesla car that left kind of a rider stranded, in a sense. So the story behind this is that this person, last name, Ryan Negri, I'm not sure if it's the popular Ryan Negri, but it's somebody named Ryan Negri, took out their Tesla Model S on a drive and went to a remote location about 6 miles away from his home, where it was in a kind of a mountainside, so that there wasn't really much signal. When they took the car from their home, they did use the Tesla Model S app to unlock the car, which is a popular feature that many automobiles have nowadays. It just makes things easier because you don't have to have the key on you. You could just use what you already have on you, which is your phone, to unlock your car. What he didn't know, and I think a lot of people don't know, is that that feature relies heavily on servers that are not near the car, the servers that are based probably somewhere in Tesla's server somewhere, and that requires internet. And the problem is, because this person was in a mountainous area with no signal, after stepping out of the car in a remote area to take pictures, the car locked and they weren't able to unlock the door because the only key that they had on hand was their phone, and the phone had no signal. So they weren't able to remotely unlock the car and turn it on. This caused a pretty big problem because the person was stranded there, and their significant other, I believe, had to go back about 2 miles by foot before they were able to get a ride to the house and actually bring back the key to unlock the car and get it moving again. But this can cause a pretty big scary thing, especially for even people like me who are living in more northern countries with snow and really cold winters. This may cause a really big problem for somebody who may get stranded in freezing cold temperatures and may not be able to be in a warm, safe place, maybe like in a mountain. So it's something that automakers are going to have to consider. Think about other ways that they can unlock it. At the same time, you have to consider the fact that you can't compromise the car's security just to make it more convenient for people. So if you do want to do it through Bluetooth or something, you have to consider the fact that it can also be hacked then and make it not safe at all. So with all those considerations, I think it's up to Tesla to see if they can do something to make it better. But at least for now, I think it's best to keep in mind what your car's limitations are, and be ready for that. Maybe have the key on you, near you, or something like that. At least I don't know. There's so many different ways that you could attack this. I mean, maybe leave the door open so it doesn't lock. I'm not sure. But either way, I can't say Tesla's 100% to blame here, but they could do something better, I think, just to make it easier. But yeah, it's an interesting topic. I think that's the main thing. It's just interesting that this kind of thing happened. And if it happens to one person, it's definitely going to happen to many, many more people. So it's important that someone takes action now and kind of figures out a creative way to get around this issue without weakening the security of the vehicle itself. And next, I think this is our second last topic for today. The next topic is something about Google Chrome. So as you can see, I pretty much use Google Chrome most of the time now. I do use Firefox for web development purposes, but Google Chrome is pretty much my daily driver. And I try to make most of my websites to be HTTPS or secured. But basically, Google is trying to promote that and trying to get many, many more websites to use secure communications between their customers or clients and the server. So in this case, as you can see, let me try to zoom that in so it's easier to see a bit. Basically, Google is trying to warn people that there may be a potential threat to their security if they're on a web page that doesn't have HTTPS connection. So for those of you who don't know, this is the HTTPS connection, the little in the URL bar, the part that comes right at the beginning. If there's a little S at the front of the HTTP, that means that it is a secure connection, and if there is an S, that means it's not a secure connection. And Google clearly shows that in this using this green lock mark. But what's happening is, starting soon, actually I think this month, Google will be also extending this to their search form fill fields. So if, for example, if you're on an HTTP website and it has a field to put in for your username and password or your credit card information, these fields will now show a warning indicator telling you that this is not a secure connection, and that if you enter anything into this field, when you click submit, this information may be submitted in an unsafe manner and will be susceptible to hacks or man in the middle attacks, where somebody else may be able to view what information you're sending to whatever web page you're visiting. So I think it's really important that they do this. I think it's important that they make this aware to people who don't know the differences and what the risks may be. They said later on the page that they're actually going to take more actions than that. They're planning on eventually completely saying that it's not as secure. So if it's HTTP page, they're going to show this red emblem and say it's not secure, rather than just showing a gray lock at the top, which is, I think, more important, because it's technically not secure. And just showing a gray lock, it doesn't really catch the user's eyes like the green emblem does. So this red not secure icon will, I think, convince more web developers to implement HTTP, especially knowing that it's no longer a financial problem. I think it's pretty much you can get it for free if you use the Apache and Friends way of doing it, which is a service called Let's Encrypt. If you use this service, then you can actually get HTTPS or a secure SSL certificate for free. And with this, even web developers who don't have the money can actually implement this in a efficient manner. And I think that's what Google's trying to do. They're slowly trying to push people into implementing and slowly making the web secure. So with that, I think the next one, I think, kind of falls right into that same area, which is by Firefox. So that's pretty cool. It's I think the first time we're actually talking about Firefox, but I think I really like what they're doing, and I want to see some more interesting things like this. So this is on the Mozilla Wiki. This was a feature that they added to the most recent version of Firefox, Firefox Nightly. So this will not be available on standard Firefox browsers yet. This is still a very early testing version, but it will eventually be rolled out if people like it and if it's working fine and all that stuff. But essentially, they're called containers. And they're basically little tabs that are actually not just tabs. They're actually kind of sandbox environments that allow you to contain your different parts of your web browsing experience. So if you look at these images, you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Like you could see on the top of this picture right here, the first picture. I'm pretty sure you can't see my mouse, so I'm just gonna kind of say it by voice. But basically, on the first tab, there's an orange highlight. The second, there's a red, and the last, there's a blue. And these highlights are basically showing different instances of Firefox. So what this means is you could have a different container for stuff that you do at work, where it's the stuff that you do at home, where it's the stuff that you do, for example, something like banking. By doing this, you can ensure that your what you do in those tabs can't be accessed by other web pages on other tabs. This is really important for people who want to keep their privacy. They don't want to involve any privacy issues. People who want to use their work web pages or whatever assets at home, but they don't want their work to be able to track what they do in their personal life. Normally, they do this using cookies and other things like analytics to keep track of this stuff. But if you use these web containers, then your workflow does not transfer between these tabs. I'm not sure if there's a clearer way for me to explain this. I know it's a little bit crude at this moment in terms of what I can say, but basically it allows you to have different, imagine having multiple different versions of Firefox running at the same time, and none of the web pages in each tab can communicate with others in the tab. Something like that. I don't know if there's any easier way to say this. And basically you'll be able to customize this container tab, so you could create your own other ones. You could see here it says personal, work, banking, shopping. These are just options. You could add more and customize the icon by a little bit and change the colors so that you can make it easier and better for you and kind of make your web browsing experience better. But at the very least, I would recommend using something separate for banking versus personal, because you really don't want to risk anything in your banking, anything being able to access your banking data in any way. So I think that's just really good strategy for you. Right now, if you do have the Firefox Nightly, it's available in the extensions tab. Basically, you need to customize your extension, and it's kind of right there where that red arrow is pointing, and you need to drag and drop it to wherever you want it, and that's how you can access it. And when you click on it, it should open up a new tab, and you kind of select what you want. So it's a pretty cool new feature. It's still, like I said, it's in testing, so we don't know exactly how it's going to be implemented finally, but it's cool that what they're doing. I kind of like this. It allows you to use the same browser. Like I said just a little bit earlier, I do use Chrome for a lot of my day-to-day browsing, and that's mainly been because of the fact that it allows you to have profiles, Chrome profiles at the top. You can see right here, it says LKNOne. You can see that glowing icon. That allows you to have different profiles, so I could actually have different kind of browsing experience for different parts of my life. One for, LKNOne related stuff, others for, maybe LKN gaming, other for personal, so on. So I do already kind of use this feature in Google Chrome, but I like to see that Firefox has implemented something similar, and I think this way it's kind of easier because it's using the same, you could use the same browser, same window, and just have different tabs with different sandboxes instead of completely different browser windows. So depending on your preferences, one may be better for you than the other, but you should try them out. And I just hope that Mozilla continues to develop this and make it a little bit better, easier to access, and easier to understand for people who aren't really sure what this is for. But besides that, I think they're doing a great job, and I hope they continue what they're doing. So anyway, guys, we've gone on pretty long now. So that's pretty much been the articles for this week. The last thing we have is the pick of the week, and today's pick of for an interesting website is called Time Lapse, and this is by Time or like Time magazine, and it's powered by Google. It was a partnership or collaboration between Time magazine and Google that allowed you to see a time lapse of satellite imagery, and this app will allow you to see the face of this planet change over time. So this kind of shows you how the world has changed in the past just based on satellite imagery that we've had, and it lets you see kind of how the surface of the planet has changed, either due to weather or natural reasons or man-made changes. And it's pretty cool like that. Something I really liked was seeing the Dubai one. You could actually see how Dubai was just a plain desert and slowly developed into this massive city, and they built their own the Palm Islands and stuff like that, which is really cool. And you could also see something like the Columbia Glacier slowly changing and melting away, where you like to do global warming and stuff like that. And the Amazon deforestation, that's a really big issue where trees have slowly been cut down and stuff like that. So you could see how much, mainly I think, humans have physically changed the face of the planet, and it's pretty massive. And even Las Vegas, you could see how the water has kind of changed and how the city has changed and so on. And the last tab right here on the end allows you to look at other places as well as entering your own location. So this will kind of help you see other areas. Keep in mind that some areas may not be as highly satellite photographed as others. So stuff like Dubai will have much better photography than maybe some random city somewhere in Siberia. But overall, the whole planet has been satellite imaged over time, a couple of years at least in between, and they allow you to see it. So basically just enter whatever city you want to see. In my case, I'm going to type in Toronto, because that's pretty close to where I'm from, and you could kind of see kind of a Google map appearance of the satellite images of Toronto, and you could kind of see how Toronto has changed. I don't think it's changed much since 1984. That's when the first satellite image is. So you could kind of see different parts of the harbor change, and kind of different docks and stuff become more straighter. You could definitely see buildings change and things getting demolished and changed into housing or apartments. It's pretty cool to see, and you could kind of do this for any place in the world and see how it changes. Some places may not have changed a lot since, especially older cities, they don't really change much. But newer areas, I think you'll see the biggest differences, or any man-made things. I think that's why Dubai was one of the key areas. But it's a pretty extensive satellite imagery thing, and I'm assuming it's just going to continue to grow, because as time goes on, it's just going to continue to add more and more satellite images, so it'll just continue to change. But yeah, anyway, it's pretty awesome, and you guys should definitely check it out if you're interested in anything like this, or just see how your hometown has changed from the past until now. Anyway, that's pretty much it in terms of the show for today. I do want to make a special mention of LKNOne.com, which is our blog where we post some reviews as well as the scripts and timelines and stuff like that for our previous shows, and even this show. I'll be posting all the links to everything we discussed on the blog, and you can check it out. The link to the blog will be in the description of today's video, so just check it out. And of course, there will be unboxings as well that are only available on the blog, so you might want to check that out if you like our unboxings as well. Anyway, guys, that is it. That concludes our topics for this week's show. We would love to hear from you on your opinions on any of today's topics. So please remember to leave a comment or contact us through our social network accounts. You can also use these platforms to suggest any interesting topics for future shows, and always we're always looking to see if there's any other stuff that we've missed. So if you have anything that you find interesting, let me know. As always, remember to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and check out other videos, and please share this with your friends. So until next time, guys, peace.